this session, mainly so that those that can't join us will be able to catch up by viewing the recording. Meg, I believe you're limiting access to the recording, or are you putting it completely on YouTube? I can't remember where we landed.
I'm not sure where we landed either. It's kind of up to you guys
Okay.
whether or not you want it publicly accessible or not.
All right. In that case, if you don't want to be seen potentially in the future on YouTube, you can turn off your camera. That'll be fine. But we'll still be expecting you to raise your hand or give us some sort of thumbs up when we want to have some sort of feedback from people. So let's see, we're up to about 34, and I'm not seeing too many more people showing up. So I think we're ready to go to your next slide, Meg, so you can orient us on MS Teams.
Okay. All right. Good morning. My name is Meg Detloff. I work for USGS PNAM. Thanks for joining us for the final HCAX workshop. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few meeting logistics. Unless you're speaking, please turn off your camera or microphone by clicking the icons on your team platform. If you have questions or feedback, please use the chat function or raise your hand and unmute yourself. We can mute you, but we can't unmute you. If you're having trouble with the chat function, a couple troubleshooting tips would be leaving this meeting and coming back in. Try using a different browser. Edge usually works better than Chrome does. Or try using a desktop version instead of the browser version of Teams. If you don't have access to chat, and I think I just said that, honestly, feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions. We don't want to limit you guys on your ability to converse with us. PNAP commits to fostering an open and welcoming environment free from harassment. So just please remain respectful. And then to keep track of participation, please open up the chat and introduce yourself with name and organization. This helps you guys acquaint yourself with the chat function. And while you're doing that, Nancy's going to go over the agenda.
Okay. Sharon?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sharon Olson with the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission. And I am also a member of the CAP core team. So we've been working on HCAX for a few years now, I think it seems like. And this is our final big meeting, but I'm sure it'll be ongoing for a while. So welcome, everyone. And brief HCAX history. Hatchery coordinated assessments, I think, was a dream. And now it's becoming a reality. And I think that we're even in the process of integrating some of the HCAX fields and some of HCAX along with coordinated assessments as well. So I think first we'll be going over the data exchange standard development, how far along we are with that. I think Mike Bannock will be telling us all about that. And then, there's a query system that's been in development. It's prototype. We'll review that, discuss it, and get your feedback on that as well. And then really exciting data use agreement updates. Data use agreements have been updated for coordinated assessments as well, and feedback always welcome. So HCAX isn't done yet. It'll probably always be ongoing like coordinated assessments, and we'll discuss what those tasks will be in the future, next steps, what we'll be doing. And then we'll wrap up and adjourn by 12:15, maybe 12:30. And along the way, if you would like to contribute, if you'd like to chat, please do. Introductions. Are we going to introduce everybody or CAP core team, or we have some 41 people on the line?
Yeah, I think we will allow people to continue introducing themselves in the chat with their affiliation. But for those of us that have been working on the CAP core team or lead on some of these groups, such as Mike, maybe we could just all turn on our camera for a little bit so that they can see who we are. So I'm going to ask Sharon, Mari, Mike, Brody, and who else? I don't think Jen is out there. So Meg, you can be her rep. And if John Otterburn snuck in here, we'll also have John Otterburn show up. Whoops. Hopefully MS Team is not about to crash. Half of my MS Team just disappeared. So let's go. I'm going to call your name and you guys can just introduce yourself quickly so people can have.
And
Yeah,
it
it did
crashed.
freeze up,
Okay.
didn't it?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Oh no.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll just do this. Yeah, go for it,
Yes,
Mari.
okay. Mari Williams, I'm with PSMFC StreamNet Project. Hand it off to Mike.
Mike Bannock with Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission on StreamNet Project also.
Sharon, go ahead.
Ha! I made it back. All right. Did you guys do anything while I was gone? No.
So we started introducing. I'm here for Jen. She's out today. I'm Meg Detloff. I just introduced myself like 2 minutes ago. I work for USGS PNAM.
Mari?
I already went, and then Mike went, and Sharon
to
is
Brody?
going to repeat. Yeah, where's Brody?
Well, here I am. Can you see me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
My name is Brody Cox. I'm the Biological Data Systems Manager for Fish Program Data in Washington State, Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. Manage a staff of about 33 doing all things fish or fish GIS or fish harvest or anything you can imagine.
And the other person that will be speaking today is Jake. He's been helping out one of the data core teams. So Jake, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Jake Chambers, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. I'm just kind of filling in. I think Casey was more on this and she's not here today. So I just wanted to make sure ODF and W got a rep in there. And we've been working on coordinate assessments and HCAX since the beginning as an organization. So thank you.
All right. So we also have John Otterburn, who is also serving on the CAP core team, but he's not. I don't think he's appeared yet, and I'm not going to attempt to touch the chat or the people list because that's what crashed the entire MS Teams on my end. So if you're there, you can speak up, John. Otherwise, we're going to just keep on going on with the agenda. Okay, I think it's safe to continue. So just to set the stage a little bit to remember why we're all here, the Coordinate Assessment Partnership began back in 2010 as a way for all of us who either compiled the data, analyzed the data, or managed these data could find a more efficient way of providing access to a subset of data that are needed for broader reporting processes or decision-making processes, instead of us having to be contacted one by one, sending all individual files out to the requester for the content, and then having that third party having to figure out how to crosswalk the data. So back in 2010, there was a group of managers as well as funding entities and those involved in the policy world that came together and saw that there was a benefit for us to collaboratively develop standardized high-level indicator or derived data estimates that could be exchanged to support broader needs, such as like NOAA status report or the Fish and Wildlife Program tracking and broader research questions. So back in 2010, we started off with representation from 4 states, mainly 1 tribe and 1 tribal consortium, as well as 4 federal agencies and 2 multi-stat compacts. And we slowly spent about 5 years getting ourselves organized, figure out what data made sense to exchange at the regional level, working really hard at figure out data sharing agreements, data sharing agreement, as well as data use agreement. And then building up that data system as well as the online query system that would support access to these data. So it took us a while back then. It took us 5 years, but after 5 years, the data started flowing through the Coordinate Assessment Partnership data system, which is housed by StreamNet. And we also set up the human infrastructure part to make sure that this partnership would continue to be successful and evolve to keep meeting the needs of the participant. And that's where we teamed up with PNAP to make sure that we would keep having that facilitation aspect ongoing, so that we would keep the connection between the individuals that make this partnership successful, to make sure these data are flowing and that they are properly documented, and then the technology side that supports the access and data storage and versioning for this partnership. So next slide. So one of the aspects of the partnership is, over time, the group has identified different types of indicators that they thought would be of value to exchange in a standardized manner for regional needs, both reporting needs, assessment needs, or decision-making processes. And one of those indicators had to do with providing access to derived hatchery information. And that was something that we've been thinking about, for, I guess, almost 14 years now, and trying to figure out what we should focus on in terms of which indicator we should exchange, and then also locating, securing funding that would allow us to bring folks together so that we could develop the first data exchange standard. And that basically finally came to fruition back in 2020, when the CAP core team worked together to develop a proposal that we submitted to the EPA Exchange Network grant, so that we could secure some funding to support the facilitation portion of this work, as well as supporting the development of data exchange standard and development of the data system tables and query, as well as the API. So we were successful in 2020. We secured that funding. And in that EPA Exchange Network proposal that we submitted, we focus on, again, wanting to share standardized metrics and high-level indicators. So always focusing a little bit higher than the measurement scale. So trying to find what is that sweet spot for providing the information that can be easily exchanged and that connect to specific needs. And our selling point for that is that we were going to build off of our success that we had done through development of the natural origin core and assessment partnership high-level indicator work, the ones that I just referred to, that dates back to a while back. Oh, there's John Arterburn. And basically focusing that we would then continue with what we learned from the core and assessment partnership, improving the consistency of information that's being consumed at a regional scale for different purposes, focusing on identifying that subset of content data that is being used at the regional scale for decision-making processes. So it wouldn't be like everything that's being collected, but really trying to narrow down what made sense to invest in exchanging in a regional system, and that we would be able to try and be inclusive in who could participate in these meetings to help inform the development of that new data exchange standard by making sure that we support a virtual participation. Next slide. So the HCAC has been a little bit more of an aggressive timeline. Instead of taking 5 years like the original core and assessment partnership effort, we basically, because we were leveraging what we had learned from that previous effort, as well as being able to leverage the existing teams and committees in place, we basically went a little bit quicker. When we first got the money in 2020, we started organizing ourselves by identifying who needed to be reached out to make sure that they could choose to participate if they wanted to, both as a biologist interested in using those data or involved in collecting and analyzing these type of data, as well as the data managers who would then actually be able to build in the capacity internally to organize these data so that they can exchange those data with the regional data system that's hosted at StreamNet. In 2021, we focused several of our conversations with the biologists to identify exactly which high-level indicator hatchery metrics we wanted to focus on, and at the same time keeping that reality check of were these data even being collected in a manner that could easily be exchanged. We had the first big workshop, of which this is the third, back in March 2021 to confirm the high-level indicators. We then spent a lot of time making sure that we understood what we were talking about by building that controlled vocabulary so that we would know exactly what the terms meant and that we would come to agreement as to the words we were using to hopefully not use words that might be confusing down the road for someone that would be choosing to use our data later on. We then basically handed over that control vocabulary to the data managers working group, those that have the experience developing data exchange standards, validation rules, and database tables, so that they could start looking at the terms and definitions we provided to them, and they could start assessing if what we proposed was what was needed, or if there was some further refinement that needed to be made to those words and terms and definitions to make sure that the way we would be setting up the data system would make sense. So there was a bit of back and forth between the data managers working group and the biologists working group so that we could refine that initial control vocabulary. And then starting at the end of 2022 all the way through 2023, our data managers working group really worked hard to start developing the tables and validation rules and seeing how internally they could organize their data in their internal data systems and seeing how that would match up or not be a good match for how we were organizing the data tables in the regional data system. After all that hard work, we then start testing some of the data flow early on this year, and now we are at the final workshop where we'll share with you what we've accomplished as well as the final next steps in order for us to be compliant with the deliverables in our EPA Exchange Network grant and additional steps and additional tasks that we plan to continue after this funding ends at the end of the summer 2024. Any questions on that before we launch into the first real agenda item about what HCAX has been doing and what we've accomplished? All right, Mike, take it away. And I think I might have to leave temporarily, Mike, because everything is freezing up again on this side, but I'll be back.
Okay, good time to reboot. Okay, so I'm going to go over the work that we did to get a data exchange standard for these types of data that we have. We had a really great team. We had an overall team that we chopped into 4 sub teams to work on specific tables. And then we would come back together after that to kind of bounce ideas off each other, and people might have done something kind of differently, so we'd make sure everything was the same way throughout. But we had participation from CritFic, from Colville Tribes, from IDFG, from Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks, from Nez Perce Tribe, from ODFW, from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, PSMFC, and WDFW. So we had a really good broad representation while creating these data exchange standards. We started our development early in 2022, and we worked hard through June of 2023. So about a year and a half we worked on things. We got our first official data exchange standard developed and accepted in December of 2022. So that was the first thing to throw data at and see what sticks. And there we go. Thanks, Jake. I will try to remember that. So early 2022 to June 2023, we worked really hard. Our first official DES was December of 2022. When people tried throwing data at that, we found some errors, which is always expected. And we came up with our second version in June of 2023. That has been working pretty darn good. It's actually kind of remarkable to me that it's worked as well as it has on only our second version. There have been some kind of small changes since then. Some of them we've implemented if it made things kind of easier. Some are waiting for the next version. There's nothing major really in there. So things are very close to what we came up with in June 2023. So after each of those two versions were adopted, we here at PSMFC had to make the database that would collect the data from all the data providers. So we had to work on tables and validation rules and all that sort of stuff. The data providers also had to do that same sort of work out on their side, make the tables and queries and whatnot that they would need to be able to send data to us via the API. So after that was done on both the provider side and the side here where we're catching the data, everybody's been able to start testing sending data to the database. Difficulties have been encountered. For the most part, they've all been fixed. Things have been going pretty smoothly. And like all data exchange standards and data sharing efforts like this, it's a living document. It's a living beast we're working with here. So the process continues. And next slide, please, Nancy. Or whoever has that. There we go. So there's 4 basic data types that got included in the data exchange standard. The first one is broodstock spawned. So these tables are supposed to be about reflecting the success, the performance of hatchery programs. So these data are not supposed to be about details of hatchery operations. This is supposed to be broader, high-level indicators. So the first one is broodstock spawned. Next type we have is releases of fish. The third one is when the fish come back, the returns. And then the last one is to put together the releases and the returns, and you can get some SARs, small to adult return rates. There are a couple of other things that were proposed that we backed off of. The first one was the hatchery return rate. So that was one that was in our initial list of data types to do. But what we found out was that it's complex. There's a bunch of legitimate different types of hatchery return rates, and that just seeing that something so complex was not a good candidate for something when we're first trying to make this system. So this will be something that we should be adding into the next version of data exchange standard, or at least pursuing it and trying to get it done. The other one is age distribution. We have age distribution data in the tables for the natural origin high-level indicators, but the way we did it isn't really working as well as we would hope, and there's a lot of people who want to be able to see age data themselves. And so we're going to be pulling those age data out of those tables. So we thought it was a bad idea to put age data into this at this point, because we'll handle that at the same time we handle age data with the other tables. I think that's probably a better way to do this. So we backed off of that one also. Next slide, please. So there are a few supporting tables. So we just looked at the 4 basic data types: the fish that respond, releases, returns, and the SARs. Each of those have some supporting information. And so we've got, we're developing a list of hatchery programs, stocks of fish. We're using the StreamNet list of hatcheries. There's 500 and something hatcheries in our table. And so we have that. And then the 4th table we have, which is being data driven as far as populating this table, is which stocks are in which hatcheries. I guess the fish stocks are also partially data driven. So each of these are standardized, and this information is embedded in each of those 4 basic types of data. Other than these, these lookup tables being there, or the lists of valid entries, those 4 basic data types, they're not tightly tied together in a database sense. So there's no kind of parent-child relationship or anything. They pretty much stand on their own and just have these as tables that we can look up. But because we do have the programs and the stocks, when we make query systems, we should be able to have those as the sorts of things that people can search for. Show me the information for this stock of fish. Show me the information for this hatchery or this hatchery program. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're back to our 4 basic data types, the 4 that we landed on. And we generally, at StreamNet here, we call these data categories usually. So I'm going to take a look at each one of these. We'll start at the top and go with broodstock spawned. Next slide. So categorization parameters, these are the categories that help identify a time series that can be tracked. And then the measures down below are the annual values that are recorded. So those categorized parameters, those are the sorts of things, again, that can be used in a query system to help people find information they're looking for. And then those measures down below are the types of information that they'll find once they get there. So the measures for the broodstock spawned is how many fish were spawned. So we've got the total, and then broken up into males, females, and jacks. And then of the total fish spawn, we've got that split into hatchery fish spawned and unmarked fish spawned. And the unmarked can be wild fish, or maybe unknown. They're basically unknown. If you get an unmarked fish, you don't necessarily know if it's wild or just a hatchery fish that didn't get marked. So all 3 of these total fish, hatchery ones and unmarked, they all get split, females, males, and jacks. So we've got all that detail in there. And the other type of information that we have is proportion of hatchery origin and natural origin spawners. And each of those are with and without jacks. So hopefully that's going to be information useful for people who need to find this sort of information for evaluating hatchery programs. And let's go to the next slide, please. So the releases, categorization here, hatchery programs, and a lot of things you just saw. And we've got release stage and location and strategy, so those sorts of things. And the measures are how many fish you released and what size were they. And let's go to the next slide. Returns are very similar. Program, the hatchery, the location, and number of fish returning. And similar to what the broodstock spawning was, this one we've got hatchery fish and unmarked fish. Here we also have stray, if there's stray hatchery fish. And again, these things are all split up into males, females, jacks, and jennies in these, and unknown. And if somebody knows if there's natural origin fish, for sure, we can capture that also. Oh, excuse me. Yes, natural origin fish, but we do not have those split into females, males, jacks. It's just natural origin fish. And the next slide for the SAR. So a lot of the same thing again for the categorization parameters, locations, and species and whatnot. The measure is the SAR, and kind of covariates that might go along with that to help with SAR information. So again, size of the fish, because that can make a big difference. And that is it for me. And we can, if there's questions for me, we can do those now. Or if you want to go back and look at anything. Okay, I guess we're on to the next slide, which is going to be looking at the prototype query system that has been developed. Who's doing that one?
That's Greg. Are you on?
Yep, I'm here.
All right, Meg's going to operate the slides for you. Ready to go.
All right. So the prototype hatchery HLI query, tabular query, is going to be, we're envisioning it being very, very, very similar to the existing tabular HLI query with sort of this simplified query approach where you have a list of all the data available and a set of filters at the top. And you can mix and match the filters that you apply. You can pick a hatchery HLI type, and then also a species or also a run, that sort of thing, or program. And then it will filter down to just the set of data that apply to the existing filter. And then by clicking the first row, the bolded first row on the left, where it says, in this example, hatchery returns, you dive into a specific record to see the detail for that specific HLI, which would be a list of the years that are in the span there. And then you could also download at the filter level. At this level, you could download all of the HLI records that compose this set of filtered data. Or you can, when you drill in and look at the detail, you can download just the specific HLI record that you're looking at. If you go to the next screen, the detail, there's a link, just like with the other HLI types, there's a link to the method URL. Sometimes that'll go to the organization website. Sometimes that goes to monitoring resources. Just depends on what the data compiler has put for the method URL. And then right now we're envisioning the little map on the right just being a point where the hatchery is, but we're open to other ideas. That was the main thing that seemed mappable in this data. So was there another slide, Mari? I don't remember. Yeah, so I guess at this point, we're wondering from the larger group are these the filters that we need? Do we need more? Do we need less? And anybody have see a particular filter missing?
I think what we're going to try and do is we're going to give all of you about, 30 seconds to look at the filters we pick, which are at the top there where you see hatchery, HLI type, stock name, species, run, compiled by, hatchery program, hatchery name. And then also take a look at the columns that we have below this diagram, which we're showing, like if once you have filter, what you'd be seeing would be the columns that says HLI, the ID for the record, the time year that spans, number of years in it, species, run, hatchery, agency detail. And maybe to take a screenshot actually might be easier if you're capable of doing that, because then what we're going to do is we're going to launch into I think it's about 2 or 3 Slidos.
Yeah.
Where we're going to restate these questions and have you guys start writing that down. And if you don't like Slido, you can also do it via chat. Send Greg a long list of everything you ever want to see via email, or just speak up as well. And Greg, I think I forgot the map part too. Is that something we want input on the map as well, or?
Well, yeah, I just covered that. Right now we're just showing a point for where the hatchery is. But if you got ideas about other things that might be useful on a map associated with particular detail, HLI record detail, we'd love to hear that.
I think we're ready for the Slido.
So if you guys haven't done this before, you can use your camera phones to basically just open up your camera and then kind of focus it on that QR code up at the top left. And then that should pop up a link. Don't take a picture of it, but it should just pop a link and you can click into that. Or you can just go to slido.com and then type HCAX 3 into the little meeting. Sorry, I'm not looking at my Slido. I also put it in the chat too, so you guys can just link hopefully right into it. And then like Nancy said, if you don't want to do any of the Slido stuff, feel free to just type it into the chat and we can get it. I see Greer has some questions. Greer wants to know, can you filter by goal? She can't remember if that was something you gathered from harvest versus conservation. And then Greer would also like the locations of associated release points in the map, maybe tied to hatchery where the fish were reared.
I'm not sure if he captured goals. Mike, do you remember, or Mike or Jake, Greg, did we capture hatchery goals in the fields? I think to recall having that as a conversation, but I'm not sure if that was.
I'm sorry, Nancy. I was typing. What did you ask?
Greer asked if we could filter by goal, and I remember we were talking about potentially providing access to any hatchery goal that was published in manager's document for the hatchery, but I don't recall if that made it into the final list of fields.
I don't think it did as far as these exact ones, but we do have a table, I believe, to capture that we worked on. So
yeah, but we do have, yeah, what was the other one? What's the field that we I think it was called hatchery type, which was either conservation or, I'm continuing to read Greer's question there. The purpose of the hatchery, was that?
Yeah, I can look that up quick.
And Greer popped up, so she can probably save me from reading her chat messages out loud.
I just think that's probably one of the more important data sets for recovery implementers, just to be able to pull really quickly conservation programs versus, harvest programs. They're, you can make a lot of assumptions about how they're managed. And in some cases, we're, more interested in a certain type of program than another. So I think it's usually, I feel like it's in the HGMP. It's definitely written down somewhere for the most part.
If you're talking just that level, I thought you were talking numerical goals like target releases and things like that.
Oh, no. Just goal, is the goal
the purpose kind of
harvest, or is the goal conservation? Those are the two biggest ones. I know there's probably other categories, but those are the two biggest ones that come to mind.
Yeah, and I think we use a different term for that because the word goal was tripping people up. But I
Sorry.
think that, oh, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, sorry, I didn't find what I thought I'd find.
Yeah, and it was when we were having that conversation, it also popped up with the Northwest Power and Conservation Council. Oh, there it is. George found it. Yep.
Hatchery program use, yeah.
Yeah,
And the
and we
list we have
There
is
you go.
conservation, harvest, recovery, reintroduction, research.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I was looking for. Although the release goal is important too, sometimes that would be more of a query and not a filter field, but
yeah, and we don't have, I'm pretty sure we don't have those yet, but that'd be a good filter too, because I don't think, yeah, we don't have the hatchery use as a filter.
yeah, at one point I was looking for hatcheries that released a certain species, that were releasing over a certain number of smolts per year to try to get at the highest, the hatcheries releasing the highest number. So that could be helpful.
Mm-hmm. And then your other one, don't go away, come back.
Yeah, the other one is, so, a lot of times you'll have fish reared at a hatchery, but then really they're being acclimated and released at satellite sites, So just, I think the hatchery locations are important, but in terms of programs, I think having the specific locations where they're being released or acclimated is important as well. Again, more important for certain types of programs, not necessarily for harvest programs, but definitely for conservation programs.
I'm pretty sure we have that in the fields. So that could be something we could change as long as the kept it a lot long.
Yes, satellite facilities, that would be acclimation. Sometimes it's just a release location where they just truck them to the release location, so it may not show up as a satellite facility, but usually they'll have a release location.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's too complicated. At the very least, you could have satellite facilities.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. This is there.
As for explicit goals, we do not have anything in the hatchery one for goals. What I found was we have a table for the natural populations where we've got goals. So that was the thought with that one, is we should at some point be able to, different organizations might have different goals for population. And we should be able to put those on a graph to compare with how the fish are doing at any particular point to how various goals, compared to various goals. But we don't have that for the hatchery fish yet.
Yeah, and that's mainly because that came out of the MAFAC discussion for the natural origin side. But the hatchery fish, yeah, we decided not to go down that route and let individual entities that have their own management plans leverage the content, but not yet pull it in. But we do have the hatchery purpose, which seems to line up more with what Greer was suggesting by the term goal. So we can use that as a filter. And then in terms of the hatchery indicator DES, we'll take a look at what other lat longs we start receiving when people start submitting more data records. And then if we can fine tune the location to be more than just the main hatchery location, then we could play around with the maps after that. See what's possible. All right, are you seeing? Let's see, so we got a mixture in the chat, some in the fields, and I think it looked like it slowed down. And for those of you who are playing around with it, you'll get another chance at providing input on that later on if you want, when we have a more functional prototype that we can actually play around with, and then you'll be able to see if you can pull what you're trying to pull. Meg, you want to go to the next one?
Nancy, I also wanted to mention, if folks want us to hop back to Mike's slides to again reorient with the HLI tables that we did develop, as some of the questions that are coming in are not for the hatchery returns table, but for the other HLIs.
How about we put the link to the DES in the chat?
Yeah, great.
It's a zip file, so people are gonna have to download the zip folder and then be able to open it up. And when you do download that zip file folder, so you're going to see several different files in there. There's that aim at helping people that are trying to submit data to us. So I'm trying to grab the file name. And what you'll try and pull out of there is the Word document with this name in it. And then I'll show you all the fields and the tables that we have in the HCAX DES.
Should the Word document be a link or?
I can't. It's part of a zip folder on our website.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Where are we at? Mari? I can see you
Sure,
moving.
folks are, yeah. We want to make sure that as we, okay. Nope.
Yeah, sorry.
We have a couple more Slidos. Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, Meg. And is there something more, well, with the Slido slide, we kind of can't really show anything that's.
No, that's fine. So on
Great.
the map that we currently had, we just showed the hatchery location because that was the easiest facility location to grab, given that we have those locations already standardized on our StreamNet fish facilities mapper. So we heard from some of you that it might be better to see if we can capture additional the lat longs in terms of facility, satellite facilities or release site, and then depending on what we receive when we start getting more data records submitted, then we can see what makes sense to map. Obviously, we can't map something that only shows up every so often, but if we get enough of lat longs for release site, which we do have in the DES, as long as people populate that, the release location, I can't remember, then we'll be able to pull that. There might be some QA/QC we have to do because we have noticed sometimes that people provide release location that seem to be where they're sitting in their truck. But as long as the truck's not too far away from the river, then it makes sense. All right, so we got some input of that in the chat. Is there anything else that people might want to have on the map? Like, would it be useful to see anything else for context on that map? Or that pretty much ESU DPS boundaries might give you some perspective on where the release is occurring? Or are you saying that? Oh, you're saying that for a filter. Sorry, Maria. Yeah,
No, and also the map too. That's another query I've done in the past is trying to look for hatcheries within a certain ESU DPS. But then on the map, you could also visually see it.
Yeah. Kind of gives you context. Yeah.
It could be HUC 12s too. It doesn't have to be population boundaries.
Mm-hmm. And we're sort of building that on a different project, so we might be able to leverage those map players.
So I don't know if anybody else is having the same thing. I see through Teams, is there something else we should display in the map? But in the Slido web page, is the map showing the hatchery facility useful? So those two
Yeah.
things seem to be out of sync.
Maureen?
Sorry, I started talking and then I realized I'm on mute. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear
Okay,
you.
so hatchery programs use multiple facilities, or at least some of them do. Not all are at one location. So is there a way to show, like if you sort by a hatchery program, the facilities that are important for that program? Can you show multiple facilities on a map? Because I guess it's hard to just choose one facility. Is it the spawning location, or is it the rearing facility? A lot of these fish are moving across facilities. So just a thought. I'm just wondering if there's a way to, if you search by a hatchery program, if you could see the facilities that are important to it.
Like the entire complex, sort of. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, I guess one of the issues is that sometimes, most of the time that's static, like you can generally know where programs are using facilities, but sometimes it changes too. So,
yeah. And we did mock that up for the Find website, where we just basically use different colors and start connecting, the hatchery facility with its associated satellite facility. So we could probably build off of that and see how it would work out, or if it would end up being too complicated on the map. But that's definitely something we can play around with. And like you say, it's a little bit fluid. So that'd be something that we would need help to make sure we keep updating it.
Thanks.
Jake?
To that question you were just talking about, I think we'll have to kind of dig into the archives and notes from when we were developing the DES, and we realized the difficulties of trying to add all the satellite facilities that are part of a hatchery program to the DES, because of the way right now currently that the program table and the stock table and the hatchery cross stock table are functioning. So I'm not saying it's not possible. I think we would really need to think about how that would work to be able to provide that information in the current tables.
And I wonder too if it's focusing a bit on what Maureen said, if there's some that are more stable in terms of the association versus those that are less stable, maybe that we can define it in that way. But yeah, I think we'll have lots of fun in all the future DDT meetings, trying to figure out what more we can bring in and what's easy to bring in versus too dynamic for us to manage. And then we had another suggestion about maybe we could connect from a documentation point of view, the HGMPs, which that's actually a pretty good point, since those are coming out. Let's see, there's the adult return location where the adults are collected. Hawk boundaries. Kind of provide some of that guidance as to what you're looking for if you end up searching for a specific area. I think that's about all I'm seeing. Oh, there's another one. Good point. Yeah, and then there's always that challenge of making content accessible versus extremely accessible. So it could be something that as we start populating things on a map, we make sure that the map can only be zoomed in up to a certain level so that people can't see exactly where your weirs are located. And ODFW is ahead of the game again. I already provide the links to the HGMPs. All right, I think that's it for this topic. All right, so this is a good starting point. I'm glad the visual mock-ups and discussion resulted in more ideas so that we can discuss that with the StreamNet steering committee and the various technical teams, the DDD team, as we work on refining that hatchery tabular query. And since I'm not seeing anything else pop up, I think we can go on to the next agenda item. But if you get other ideas, you can always email those to us. And at the end of today's presentation, we'll also share with you how you could join one of these teams if you would like to, if you're not already serving on one of them. Mari?
Thanks, folks. Yeah, we will have, I do think that it sounds like we have a lot of input coming in for the query filters per HLI. So now we're gonna, part of the grant with EPA was that we would update our data use agreements. Can we go on to the next slide? I'm gonna pre-apologize for the amount of text that's gonna be on these slides, but text is what we are reviewing. So the email last week had the current draft included. So if you want to look at the file itself, you should have a copy. In terms of primary changes to take a look at, we did include monitoring resources as a support structure option that alongside CRITFIX Columbia Basin Fish and Wildlife Library. I added in some citation guidance, which perhaps folks have been familiar with me talking about. And overall, I tried to align the verbiage with how we've actually been applying and using and expecting folks to use the data sharing agreement. We changed the terms open access to publicly accessible. There's a link to the legal interpretation of each of those. Publicly accessible retains copyright ownership of the product, whereas open access does not assume any sort of ownership of product. So publicly accessible seems to fit more of what we intend with coordinated assessments data exchange. So you can find the previous version, so you can compare the two. It's on the website under resources and tools, data exchange, use agreements and policy. Please take a good look at it and give me feedback however you prefer. So next. So the data policy, this is text that is on the web page. And the old version is on the web page. The new version is here and in the file that you were sent. So this tries to put forward the standards that coordinated assessments and StreamNet will be in hosting the data. These are the basic expectations and how we try to manage the data and the processes that we have standardized to be replicable and transparent. I know that I need to pause in these. I can only see myself. Thanks, Meg, for laughing.
I can see you
Unmuted.
I'm not seeing any hands up or anything yet.
Yeah, please interrupt. Because it's a lot of text and me talking.
Pretty much the main ideas are consistent with the original intent of the older version, but we updated the wording and reorganized the sections so that things that had to do with data sharing were together, data use were together. And then this first section is mainly the introduction to that, right?
Yeah.
And
we also included information about the QA/QC procedures that have been developed over the last several years, as well as the API access. So those things weren't part of the data use and sharing agreements when we first started this, and they have been great additions. Okay, so no hands up on data policy. We can come back to this, but let's go on to next. The data use agreement. How many of our 46 people on here have actually read this? It downloads automatically with the from the HCAX data exchange download, and it's one of the tabs on the surprise. We have a data use agreement. If you pull data out of coordinated assessments, you've been given this, and to use the data, you are supposed to have said that you agree. And through the map query, there is a pop-up that shows up, and I think you've then got about 6 months to not have to accept the pop-up, and then it comes back up again. But it does download with the data, regardless of query or tabular or map or tabular. A lot of our common questions or complaint issues, I guess the common question or issue that comes up most often in my experience is, why is it different? And so if you look at number 1, we state up front that it is dynamic. It is not a static data set. We do have version control. So this does address you must credit the data providers, including using data citations when you are publishing or presenting the data. There is information here about minimum data citation inclusions.
That's the new addition, right? That's
types of information.
We beefed up that section. So the current data use agreement, if you go on our website, doesn't have that detail, but we found, I think it was during the last CAP workshop, that it's nice to tell people they need to cite, but if you don't help them figure out how to cite, they're kind of struggling. So we added that detail in here.
And they have grand plans of the forced citation to download with data once we have the data set identifier that will come in the coordinated assessments DES update in July. So part of this is also that the data contributors have provided links to the metadata and associated publications so that folks can do their own due diligence about whether or not the data is appropriate for them to be using for their purpose. We do line out how data consumers should be contacting the data providers prior to publication to make sure that that the data providers agree with the appropriate usage and the methods of acknowledgement. We have a failure to comply piece in here. I think we all know that this is pretty unenforceable, but we are doing our best in saying that you should comply with this, and we will try and figure out how to not allow you to access the data if you fail to comply with this.
That also sets it up so that if someone does not comply with it and we see it being published or presented somewhere, then we can refer back
to.
Yeah, so then you can use the scientific community to help acknowledge the fact that they were not compliant.
Yeah, because number 2 does say we'll follow reputable standards for use and interpretation of scientific information. John?
This isn't very important, but on number 6 in that first sentence there after these, you're missing the D in data.
Oh, yes. Thank you. It's
I like
very
a legal
important.
loophole.
The D in data is very important.
All right, so that's the data use agreement. So
Shift to
well,
next. Or-
will be so yeah, memorize it while you can. But right now for this conversation, try and remember the high level concepts that we're identifying in the policy and the agreement, and then when Mari's going to show the sharing agreement, which on the next slide, try and recall the higher level concepts that we're touching on here, so that when we go to the Slido, you'll be able to identify if there's any concept that maybe we missed or some that don't make sense, and we'll capture that during the Slido. I think we're ready to go to the sharing.
Yeah. So this is the text for the data sharing agreement. It lines out how data providers will both identify themselves as providing the data, but also those that participated and contributed to that data. So this identifies the submit agency in case the submit agency is doing it on behalf of another agency that is the official contact for the data set, as well as the other data sources field. Those are 3 opportunities to identify who has contributed to the data that is at an entity, agency, or tribe level. We agreed fairly early on in the process that identifying individual persons would become a massive endeavor in this very, long time series with so many human contributors. Jake?
Yeah, not too critical either, but the version you sent us a week ago is different than what you presented here on the ordering of stuff. My paragraph 2 in the document is not even on this page.
Okay.
I think it's up in the introduction on your slide. We can take a closer look later, but I just noticed that.
Yeah, thanks.
It's a bit different.
Mm-hmm. I did not notice that. And we can send
the
up
previous version. Yeah. I'll put the screenshots in the chat. You can be able to expand it.
Yeah. Thanks, Nancy. And thank you, Jake, for actually looking at it.
I know, you actually read it.
Yeah.
Details.
It's the issue of when you have looked at something for 2 weeks straight, can you see that you're missing a D?
Yep.
So the sharing agreement does set forth, the QA/QC expectation for the data being submitted, as well as including metadata that will provide links or access to protocols and methods, and resources available to use as repository and documentation of those, both the CritFic library and monitoringresources.org.
So I believe if you are interested, you should be able to click on the little images I put in the chat, and then it'll open up to a big screen so you can see what's in there. The process for this is right now we're looking mainly for red flags. Like, is there anything that in there that makes you uncomfortable that you would say, I will not participate in exchanging data because there's something in there I don't like, or there's something in there that's missing that I would need to have in there so that I would be comfortable exchanging. Those are the sort of high level input
So
we want this
next.
time. Yeah. Go ahead.
Next, Meg.
Lido time.
Yep. Oh. Oh, yeah, you're.
Oops. Okay, so this is the first one. That's just high level concept. Are we okay with the general concept and intent of what you just saw and heard for the data use agreement, data sharing agreement? Or is there anything in there that we're missing or that should not be in there? And you can set it as a flag. And if you want to provide details, you can provide details in the chat and we'll capture that as well.
Thanks, John. Okay, good survey of where folks are feeling at this point with the, I love that folks want to review. Next for Meg. So if you have if you've identified red flags at this point, it'd be great to capture them within the Slido for us. But please know I welcome emails, chats, whatever.
And this is a process overview. It's like what happens now. This is our first level to just kind of get an idea of where we're at. Mari will send out the final version out to the group again so that we can give people time to read it and provide input on the version. But then process-wise, we will then bring back all this input to the StreamNet steering committee so that they can further discuss it, as well as discuss it to our technical teams. And so there'll be lots of chance for input. And if you email additional input, they'll all be brought forward to the broader group for discussion, as well as the CAP core team.
Yeah. Thanks, Sharon.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the protocol meth documentation. I'm trying to remember the exact field name. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, Nancy.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
It is a required field in the DES. And so folks will insert either a URL to a document that describes it or to monitoring resources. The CryptFig library is available for stable DOI links in case in case the hoster of your website is similar to NOAA and they like to do facelift every couple of years and break all the links that you tried to document your work with.
Mm-hmm. And if you just don't have your documentation available anywhere,
if you don't have somewhere to host it.
Yeah, we can send it to the library and they'll provide us with the URL, a library URL that persists over time. But yeah, there is a flexibility in there. It's either you can connect to MR if you already are using it, or if your documentation resides elsewhere, we can connect to that as well.
Correct one
Mhm.
thing, the documentation fields are
Mhm.
not required. Maybe they should be.
In HCAX, you messed
Yeah.
up. Yeah, I think that we basically allow they have to put something in for the wild or not. John?
The SAR table, something is required. The other ones
Yeah.
not. I'm not sure how we did that.
See, there's always something
Good.
that slips
Yep.
past us. John?
Check.
Well, I think you should make them required fields if you're going to make it item number 2 in your data use agreement that you're going to provide that.
Definitely agree. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one way or the other, they ought to be consistent with one another.
Mm-hmm. And there's also like how much fun we have always staring at all these tables and thinking we caught everything.
Yep.
Yeah. Plus, like compliance has been pretty good for a non-required field.
Everybody I think most folks at this point working with us understand the importance of the methods and documentation fields, but they should be required. Okay. We can come back to this. Email is always open. We are at time to shift to Jake's slides.
And then in terms of giving a little bit of timeline for your input, if you have any questions or input on the data sharing agreement, data use agreement, or the overarching introduction policy section, try and get those to us within June or July, so that way we can get ready for our next committee meetings.
Yeah, all the changes will have to be approved by the steering committee and XCOM.
All right. I think now we're ready for Jake.
Going to discuss kind of what's been accomplished by several of the agencies so far, testing out the data exchange standard with their own data and their systems, and including the API up at PSMFC. Next slide. Excuse me. Most of you might be familiar with this. The deliverables for the grant are very similar to the natural origin one several years ago. PSMFC will need to develop the XML schemas and then provide the node to the EPA network, which is a vast amount of different schemas and things that people have done around the country. That's a pretty big source of information. Need to review the data sharing agreement and have that completed, which we've done today. And I don't think you guys need a third reminder, but please provide feedback and information before it goes out to any of the committees for final approval. Also, to communicate what has been accomplished so far, and that's what we're doing today, so we can check that off the box when the close of the workshop. And then there'll be a final report to the Washington, what is the GSRO again? The Salmon Recovery Office up in Washington, and that's due by the.
That'd be the Governor's Recovery Office.
Someone trying to speak or?
Yes.
Brody?
Yeah, Brody's saying it's the Governor's Salmon Recovery Office, which Jake had actually found.
Yeah, it just didn't come to my brain there. And that's due, their final report's due by the end of August, when our grant contract is up. Next slide. Now we'll talk about kind of the status of a few of the agencies that have started working with the data exchange standard, the draft version. George Batten informed us that he's completed the Chief Joseph Hatchery for several years of data, and expect to be able to keep updates moving forward on a yearly basis. And I don't know if George is online. I meant to reach out to you if this included returns, brood stock, and releases. If you're out there, you can chime in or type in.
Yeah, it includes all those things. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. For ODF and W, need to give a little background on why we've been able to complete a lot of the programs for the West region and have been able to provide some data so far due to some staff retirements. Cedric Cooney, our longtime leader, is finally retired, and I've been working on other projects for the agency. So we were able to hire a data assistant, Megan Griffiths, who started back in August. And between her working on this full time, myself about 50% of the time, and our software developer, Peter Robinson, we've been able to provide a lot of data to StreamNet already and test the data exchange standard and all the validation rules for the fields, the records, and the tables. So hopefully, we've gone through some growing pains. It took us about 6 to 7 months just to get to this point. We've helped the partners out there solve some of the problems with Mike Bannock, working quite right with some of the validation rules. So hopefully moving forward, this will help out our coordinated assessments partners as they start actively getting more of their programs together and testing out the system. We hope to be able to add a few more programs by the end of summer of this year, mainly for areas around the lower snake compensation plan and maybe the Umatilla. We're not making any promises at this point because we're kind of starting new workflows for this compared to where we started out with the 14 programs we've already worked with. So we expect to be able to annually be able to update these, hopefully on a yearly basis. But as with anything and all the work we do with coordinated assessments and StreamNet, a lot of this will be resource permitted for that to happen. Next slide, please. The Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife has started working on testing some small data sets out. They're focusing more on the lower Columbia hatcheries at this point, and looking forward to get started with some automation. It's been kind of a process for them to start in their workflows on trying to gather the data and understand where everything is located throughout the agency. So they've just started with small data sets and have been validating and testing against the API recently. And going forward, they like to proceed with the rest of the lower Columbia, and then in the future, start working on the other facilities statewide. Idaho has completed their pilot project. Returns, they were able to hire a person dedicated to focus on HCAX. The existing personnel started to develop tables, views for some of the metrics and the highlights that are part of it, the returns, brood stock, and releases. They've completed the pilot project, and they plan on working with fins and the lower snake compensation plan first to start developing the data flows for the rest of their programs. And they're going to, for the SARS, and I should have mentioned this for ours, they're going to want to work with their production and research staff to develop the workflows for those, because they're actually don't know. You'll have to explain why they might be different from the returns and releases in broodstock. But for our SAR, we would definitely need to work with our hatchery program in the propagation team. They do more of the estimates and high level work on the SARs and things like that, recruits per spawner, and more of those high level detail things. So we'll be working with them as time and resources allow. And for Washington or Idaho, please let me know if I forgot anything or if you'd like to add any details there.
That's good.
Okay.
All good. Thanks, Jake.
I would just like to add for Washington that the delay is actually being caused by a reworking of our internal corporate data system. So getting that to match up with that API might help us through some of that work. So I appreciate your help, Mike, on helping Michelle get that in.
Great. Thank you. Next slide, please. And I guess this the kind of final review. Greg had showed the tabular data query. So hoping to have that built out by the end of 2024 or 2025 contract year. And like find out if there's interest in holding this more of a separate meeting to review and provide input on the query system itself and the content within it. I don't know if there's a Slido with this one. Might be, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, I will add my input as yes there.
You're supposed to do the Slido, Jake.
Yeah. Okay, I'll get my camera. Yeah, I think that one thing, I don't know how other folks' systems are, but we use our hatchery management system for our pilot of those 14 programs. And it took a bit to understand the information and be able to get the data exchange standard. But what really helped us was Megan being able to focus on it really hard and use Python scripts to extract the information we needed and to get it in to the DES format. So that saved us a lot of time, but now she's kind of shifted focus, not necessarily reinventing the wheel, but having to do a whole different data system that's not able to extract directly from a SQL database. So, there's going to be more growing pains for us, and things will look a little different with working with Lower Snake Comp and some of the other programs in the east side of the state.
And basically what we're trying to get a feel for right now is out of the 40 plus people attending, is there enough interest for us to actually hold a virtual meeting for the HCAX query when we have a functional web-based version for people to try out? Or if not, then we'll just stay within our existing teams and committees to test it out. But if there's interest, then we can convene it and have a slightly broader conversation with the group. And if you want to make sure we don't forget about you, if we don't get enough people saying yes, they want us to have a virtual meeting, you can add your name in the chat. We'll make a point to reach out to you when we start doing some pilot testing. That's interesting. The more I tell people I'm not going to do it, the count's going up slowly now. Yeah. Okay. About 11-ish people interested. Okay. So we're ready for the last agenda item. Brody?
Hello, everyone. Well, that was the past and the present. And now I want you to close your eyes and imagine the future. Next slide.
And we're done. No. No, next slide.
You can open your eyes now. We're done. Okay, so we got a Slido here. Can you guess how many hatcheries we will have data for by 2026 when are announced in the CAP newsletter? Wait, when are announced in the CAP newsletter? Can you guess how many hatcheries we will have data for by 2026? Oh, yeah, I would hope so. Okay. More than 20? It's not an option. 20 is more than 10, so I guess that fits.
Yeah, these are just 3 categories.
Yeah, right.
I want to say 221, and I can't do it.
1 million. 1 million hatcheries, which is also more than 10. Well, we'll see, because the winner is going to be announced in the CAP newsletter. Okay. Well, I hope so, after all this work. Next slide, please. So, okay, this slide, I think, and I did take a look at it before I got on here, is illustrative of the many ways that we keep up engagement with the HCAX and the CAP. So the Coordinated Assessments Partnership has many ways to keep people informed. So we do this twice a year newsletter. You know, we have a structure with the XCOM meeting in twice a year or meeting in fall and winter once a year. And then we have several work groups under that. And then the StreamNet Steering Committee. And, you know, we have the CAP workshop every 2 to 3 years. And then we have our web pages. And so I guess the question is, are there additional suggestions on how we keep engagement with the CAX as we fold it into the HCAX, as we fold it into the CAX structure? So we don't really have a Slido for this, but just opening up to discussion. Are there any other ideas for how people need to be informed, or are you currently informed quite enough, and perhaps too much is also an option. So I'm informed a lot, but I am also on these these steering committees and subcommittees and work groups and things. So you'll notice in those groups it's sort of the usual suspects, but for the rest of the 38 people on this meeting, are you getting informed enough to know what's going on with the HCAX, and are you interested in knowing more? So one of the questions is, how likely are you to attend a meeting every 3 years for the CAP workshop that discusses refinements to the indicators? So 3 years is like a long time to forget what you did the last time, and then go back over it for half the meeting, and then like maybe talk about some future work. But if you get longer than that, everyone's forgotten. You're like starting over again. So that's a long time. Maybe sooner, workshop sooner. Or is there not that much movement in it? And then how frequently would you like CAP updates are the questions. So just throwing that out there. You don't have to answer right now. You can get back to Nancy or any of the people on the core team to do that. So did you have anything else you wanted to say on that, Nancy, in this
No,
slide?
you're good.
All
yeah,
right.
And I love how you just told him to email me. I say email Jen.
Well, you seem like a central knowledge point there, point person. You can email me and then I will forward them to Nancy is another option. Okay, next slide then. So the other question here that I was asked to field is what should be the next CAP indicator. Now that we did hatchery, then we did the other CAX indicators. What else? If we close our eyes again and imagine a future in which more data is being exchanged, would it be bull trout? Would we want to talk about carrying capacity, white sturgeon, perhaps lamprey, other fish, age data, hatchery return rates, or perhaps harvest?
And I think the key
You be the
point on this
judge.
one is it's future.
Oh, this one has one.
We're
Great.
not about to jump
So-
into doing this one right away, right? But
So we're
just to give us
leaving the
focus.
theater of the imagination and moving into the theater of the actual. So close your eyes, and before you close your eyes, put your phone up to that QR code, scan it, and then open your eyes again, staring at your phone, and then make a decision. We have to make a decision, or we're going to live and die this way. So that's age data is looking popular.
Yeah, or any input you guys can provide to us now would be great, because every year with the StreamNet Executive Committee, we review our coordinated assessment plan, like our strategy, and we always get tons of new ideas for indicators, but we need to be able to focus a little bit as to what would make sense when we do have the capacity to start working on another indicator. What should we be looking at?
Age data is interesting. You know, my favorite category is the most mysterious category of all, and that's other. So that leaves a lot of things open.
That's just because it gives you flexibility to pick whatever you want. You're like, other, yes.
I can put it off till tomorrow. It's like, what was that one with Go on the Wind? Yeah.
And if there's something that we really should not try and do because it's maybe being done somewhere else, or it's done at work, and we're not aware of it, let us know.
Oh yeah, we could have taboo categories, like do not go there because it's too much, it's too controversial.
Or I'm already working on it. Give me some time. I'm almost done.
That's right. It's too hot to handle. You can't handle it. If that's burning in your heart and you want to get it out there, just email Nancy. For sure. Look at that age data. That's in the lead. Look at that. Popular stuff. Age data.
All right.
And look at that. Other fish is getting nothing. Come on, people. Can we get something
No,
for
they're
other
saving
fish?
it for the next one. They're saving it
How
for the
about the
next slide.
lamprey? Where's the lamprey?
Yeah, I think we should do next slide.
Okay, next slide. Thank you,
And
everyone, who participated in that.
And Jake, in response
Four
to your
traits of
answer,
a quiz. That was outstanding. Okay. Okay. Wait a minute.
So this is where you can clarify the other category if you've been holding back.
For all you people too shy to vote for other, here's a forum for you to just come right out and tell us.
And then
Type in an indicator you think should be added.
And Jake was asking if Brody would be willing to also lead the next EPA grant, because we always need a
heck yeah.
Washington GSRO to help us with all the
100%.
paperwork.
1,000,000%. I believe in this.
We've gotten better at writing them now. I mean, we're getting more efficient.
There was somebody who, there it is. Oh, parental based tagging. Look at that. PBT, folks.
Yeah, that one keeps popping up. PBT and GSI.
Yeah. Okay.
You guys could be auctioneers, right? Okay, what's next?
I don't know. The last auctioneer I witnessed ended up buying half the stuff he was auctioning, so I'm not supporting.
That's like a self-help issue. That's like they need therapy if they're auctioning and buying at the same time. That's what I'm doing here today, folks, in front of you. I'm buying all this. Anything you tell me, I'm going to buy it. We're going to work it into that grant.
Well, just to make you laugh, I typed in others.
There was a lot of typing. Whoever was doing that for nothing. I think that there's
I think is it stuck maybe? I don't know. Either 4 people all wrote PBT. The Slido might be stuck.
Okay. Well, there you have it. I mean, that's a contingent of 4 devoted individuals
Consensus.
holding up PBT.
You can't type the word other.
The next big thing. Yeah. And when I say other, I mean actually other.
I typed in other just to try to get Brody to laugh, and it didn't work for me.
Okay. All right. Is it? I guess that. Well, all right. Next slide. I guess you can. Wait, there's 2 people typing. No, stop the horses. Stop the train. Presses, whatever they are.
Oh, if you keep making me laugh, you're gonna have to curve my slides, Brody. Okay.
So who does the wrap up and next steps? I don't know who does.
If I can stop laughing, it'll be me.
Okay. Alrighty. Thanks everyone who participated.
All right. So just to wrap up. So you showed you where you can access the data exchange standard as we currently have it today. Our data exchange standards are dynamic. We constantly refine them as people start testing out the data exchange. We realize sometimes that there is some improvements or clarifications that need to be made, or that there's a missing field that needs to be added. So we will do our best to keep you all updated as to when we make modifications through the newsletter, or if you attend a CAP workshop or decide to join any of our committees and teams, then you'll be part of that that group that makes those that discusses those required changes and decide if they're possible to be implemented. If you are a data provider, we also make a point of following our guidelines to make sure that we give everyone an advance notice of changes that are being proposed, and give you, can't remember how many months, but enough time for you to let us know if you need more time before we implement the changes, or if you won't be able to work with that change, so that way we can accommodate people's varying needs so that they can continue to successfully exchange content. In terms of next steps, we will reach out to all of you when we are ready to share what we have in terms of the query. And depending, I think we had like about 11 people that said they were interested. So we might do more of an email asking who's interested, instead of just setting up a meeting date for virtually walking through the query and testing it out. We will revise the DSA and DUA per the input we receive between now and when we meet with our steering committee in this fall in September. So please continue providing input on that if you have any suggestions or clarifications related to those red flags some of you noted. Mari will send out the document, the latest version of the document, so that you can provide input on that. And other than that, I mean, we'll keep you guys posted in terms of how the records submittal goes, and that is something that we summarize in our newsletter. So far, we've only been summarizing the natural origin, but now that the HCAX data exchange is ready to be used, we'll start adding that into our newsletter so that you can track how many records we're getting in for what number of hatchery programs. And I believe that's all we have in terms of agenda. Just going to show you one slide. Next slide, how you can contact us if you want to get more information about joining any of the teams, or provide general input on how you want us to submit information to you, keep you in the loop. Meg, I don't know if your slide deck froze, but there you can go to suggestion and questions. There you go. And last but not least, we want to give a shout out to everyone that helped us get to where we are. Next slide. And thank everyone that participated in the biologist work group, as well as the data work groups. You guys invested a lot of time helping make sure that we understood what you thought was value added for regional exchange, and making sure that we developed the control vocabulary and exchange standard in a manner that would be effective in exchanging the data that you currently collect and manage within your own internal systems. And that's all we have. Let us know if anybody have any questions or any comments before we wrap up. Oh, okay. Guess we're adjourned. So keep a lookout for
John.
those newsletter.
John raised his hand.
John raised his
I thought he was waving goodbye.
I was trying to wave goodbye, but instead I raised my hand, so I'll just say goodbye the old-fashioned way.
Thanks, everybody, for all the hard work on this.
Well done.